spring is one of the four conventional temperate seasons, following winter and preceding summer. There are various technical definitions of spring, but local usage of the term varies according to local climate, cultures and customs. When it is spring in the Northern Hemisphere, it will be autumn in the Southern Hemisphere. At the spring equinox, days are approximately 12 hours long, with day length increasing as the season progresses. Spring and springtime refer to the season, and also to ideas of rebirth, rejuvenation, renewal, resurrection and regrowth. Subtropical and tropical areas have climates better described in terms of other seasons, for example dry or wet, monsoonal or cyclonic. Often the cultures have locally defined names for seasons which have little equivalence to the terms originating in Europe. Meteorological reckoning. Meteorologists generally define four seasons in many climatic areas: spring, summer, autumn and winter. These are demarcated by the values of their average temperatures on a monthly basis, with each season lasting 3 months. The 3 warmest months are by definition summer, the 3 coldest months are winter and the intervening gaps are spring and autumn. Spring, when defined in this manner, can start on different dates in different regions. In terms of complete months, in most North Temperate Zone locations, spring months are March, April and May, although differences exist from country to country. Most South Temperate Zone locations have opposing seasons with spring in September, October and November. Swedish meteorologists define the beginning of spring as the first occasion on which the average daytime temperature exceeds 0 degrees Celsius for 7 consecutive days, thus the date varies with latitude and elevation. In Australia and New Zealand, spring conventionally begins on September 1 and ends November 30. Astronomical and solar reckoning. In some regions in the Northern Hemisphere, the astronomical March equinox is taken to mark the first day of spring, and the northern solstice is taken as the first day of summer. In other regions, the equinox is taken as mid-spring. In South America, the Tupi-Guarana calendar, from the former inhabitants of what is presently Brazil, northern Argentina and Paraguay, counted 365 days, plus a fourth part of a day, needing no extra day every 4 years. The beginning of the solar year was marked by the rising of the M25 open cluster in the constellation Sagittarius in the horizon, which occurs between June 5 and June 11 in this part of the world. For these native people, the 4 seasons were clearly identified by the solstices and equinoxes. The trajectory of the sun throughout the year was divided into the New Age and the Old Age. Arapiahu was spring and summer, and Arimar Pound was autumn and winter. This calendar, which had no graphed or written form, marked activities such as hunting, fishing, planting, harvesting and religious rituals. In East Asian solar term, spring begins on February 4 and ends on May 5. Similarly, according to the Celtic tradition, which is based solely on daylight and the strength of the noon sun, spring begins in early February and continues until early May. Other calendar-based reckoning. According to another tradition in the United States, February 2, Candlemas, can be regarded as the start of spring if it is mild. The U.S. spring season can also be regarded as beginning on the day after President's Day and ending on the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. In South Africa, Australia and New Zealand, spring begins on September 1 and ends on November 30, and has no relation to the vernal equinox. In Ireland, spring traditionally starts on February 1, St. Bridget's Day, although Irish meteorologists consider the whole of February to be part of winter. Ecological reckoning. The beginning of spring is not always determined by fixed calendar dates. The phenological or ecological definition of spring relates to biological indicators. The blossoming of a range of plant species, and the activities of animals, or the special smell of soil that has reached a temperature for microflora to flourish. It therefore varies according to the climate and according to the specific weather of a particular year. Most ecologists divide the year into 6 seasons that have no fixed dates. In addition to spring, ecological reckoning identifies an earlier separate pre-vernal season between the hibernal and vernal seasons. This is a time when only the hardiest flowers like the crocus are in bloom, sometimes while there is still some snow cover on the ground. Natural events. During spring, the axis of the Earth is increasing its tilt relative to the Sun, and the length of daylight rapidly increases for the relevant hemisphere. The hemisphere begins to warm significantly, causing new plant growth to spring forth, giving the season its name. Snow, if a normal part of winter, begins to melt, and streams swell with runoff. Frosts, if a normal part of winter, become less severe. In climates that have no snow and rare frosts, the air and ground temperatures increase more rapidly. Many flowering plants bloom this time of year, in a long succession, sometimes beginning when snow is still on the ground, continuing into early summer. In normally snowless areas, spring may begin as early as February, heralded by the blooming of deciduous magnolias, cherries and quince, or August in the same way. Many temperate areas have a dry spring, and wet autumn, which brings about flowering in this season more consistent with the need for water as well as warmth. Subarctic areas may not experience spring at all until May or even June. While spring is a result of the warmth caused by the changing orientation of the Earth's axis relative to the Sun, the weather in many parts of the world is overlain by events which appear very erratic taken on a year-to-year basis. The rainfall in spring follows trends more related to longer cycles or events created by ocean currents and ocean temperatures. Good and well-researched examples are the El Niño ±0 effect and the Southern Oscillation Index. Unstable weather may more often occur during spring, when warm air begins on occasions to invade from lower latitudes, while cold air is still pushing on occasions from the polar regions. Flooding is also most common in and near mountainous areas during this time of year because of snowmelt, accelerated by warm rains. In the United States, Tornado Alley is most active this time of year, especially since the Rocky Mountains prevent the surging hot and cold air masses from spreading eastward and instead force them into direct conflict. Besides tornadoes, supercell thunderstorms can also produce dangerously large hail and very high winds, for which a severe thunderstorm warning or tornado warning is usually issued. Even more so than in winter, the jet streams play an important role in unstable and severe weather in the springtime in the Northern Hemisphere. In recent decades, season creep has been observed, which means that many phenological signs of spring are occurring earlier in many regions by a couple of days per decade. Spring is seen as a time of growth, renewal, of new life being born. The term is also used more generally as a metaphor for the start of better times, as in the Prague Spring. Spring in the Southern Hemisphere is different in several significant ways to that of the Northern Hemisphere. This is because, there is no land bridge between Southern Hemisphere countries and the Antarctic zone capable of bringing in cold air without the temperature mitigating effects of extensive tracts of water. The vastly greater amount of ocean in the Southern Hemisphere at all latitudes. At this time in Earth's geologic history, the Earth has an orbit which brings it in closer to the Southern Hemisphere for its warmer seasons. There is a circumpolar flow of air uninterrupted by large land masses. No equivalent jet streams. And the peculiarities of the reversing ocean currents in the Pacific. Cultural events, Albania. Albania celebrates the lunar spring day on March 14, and from 2004 it has been a national holiday. It is an old pagan practice, particularly popular in the city of Elbasan, central Albania. According to some sources, Dita e Vera S derives from the Arba Resha, an Albanian community that has lived in Italy since the 15th century. On March 14, the Arba Resha of the Italian coast collect a tuft of grass roots and soil, bringing it home to commemorate the anniversary of their emigration from Albania. In fact, some sources date back this celebration to ancient Illyria. At that time, the feast was celebrated on March 1, which in the Julian calendar, corresponded to the first day of the year. Australia. The annual spring racing carnival of thoroughbred horse racing events is held in Melbourne in October and November, with large crowds attending. The Melbourne Cup, held on the first Tuesday of November, is Australia's premier horse race and is recognised as a public holiday in the host city of Melbourne. It is also referred to as the race that stops a nation. Bangladesh. Spring season is a festive time in Bangladesh. People celebrate this season with newly reaped paddy. Villagers make various types of pitha to entertain guests. Canada. Victoria Day in Canada is celebrated on the Monday on or before May 24. The holiday is celebrated in honor of Queen Victoria's birthday, but is often informally considered as marking the beginning of the summer season in Canada. Carnival. In some regions, the first spring festival of the new year is Carnival, 40 days before Easter. Easter. Easter is the most important religious feast in the Christian liturgical year. Christians believe that Jesus was resurrected from the dead on the third day, and celebrate this resurrection on Easter Day, 2 days after Good Friday. The date of Easter varies between March 22 and April 25 in most tradition, and between April 4 and May 8 in some Eastern Christianity. Egypt. Shamanism is an Egyptian national holiday marking the beginning of spring. Ancient Egyptians used to celebrate the harvest of the wheat, and modern Egyptians have continued celebrating this holiday even now. It always falls on the day after the Eastern Christian Easter. Despite the Christian-related date, the holiday is celebrated by Egyptians regardless of religion. Iran. The first day of spring is the beginning of the new year, Nowruz, in the Iranian calendar. Nowruz, which means new day in Persian language, marks an important traditional holiday festival celebrated in Iran as well as in many other countries with a significant population of Persian people, such as Azerbaijan, Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, and by Kurdish communities in Turkey and Iraq and elsewhere. Israel. In the ancient Jewish calendar, the month of Nisan was the original first month of the year. The Jewish holiday of Passover is celebrated in the 15th of Nisan, and is also known as the spring holiday. The State of Israel holds during the spring 3 national holidays, Yom HaZikaron LaShuv La Javura, Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAzmaut. India. Holi, the festival of colors, celebrated at the end of the winter season, is the most vibrant festival of colors celebrated by Hindus in India. People throw water and apply colored powders on each other. Holi is celebrated in northeast and central India. The best Holi is celebrated in Mathura and Vrindavan. Vasant Panchami is celebrated in North India on the 5th day of the Indian month Man, the first day of spring. Sankranti in Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka and Thai Pongal in Tamil Nadu are celebrated in mid-January to mark the beginning of the spring season. In Assam Valley, Rongoli Bihu is celebrated for 7 days from 13 to April 19. This is a harvesting festival celebrated by all sections of the community, which distinguishes it from other Indian festivals that are more religious in nature. In India, Nowruz is called Navri or Navroj. Many people celebrate Nowruz, mainly in the states of Jammu and Kashmir, Gujarat and in Uttar Pradesh. May Day. May 1st is the date of many public holidays. In many countries, May Day is synonymous with International Workers' Day, or Labor Day, which celebrates the social and economic achievements of the labor movement. As a day of celebration, the holiday has ancient origins, and it can relate to many customs that have survived into modern times. Many of these customs are due to May Day being a cross-quarter day, meaning that it falls approximately halfway between the spring equinox and summer solstice. In the Celtic tradition, this date marked the end of spring and the beginning of summer. In line with this, Ireland celebrates St. Bridget's Day as the first day of spring. Mesopotamia. Okichu was a spring festival in ancient Mesopotamia. The name is from the Sumerian for barley, originally marking 2 festivals celebrating the beginning of each of the 2 half-years of the Sumerian calendar, marking the sowing of barley in autumn and the cutting of barley in spring, in the month of Nisanu. In Babylonian religion it came to be dedicated to Marduk's victory over Tiamat. Nepal. In Nepal, people celebrate Holi, the Hindu festival of colors. Romania, Mar Florinri unregistered trademark or is an old Romanian celebration at the beginning of spring, on March 1. Mar Florinri unregistered trademark or, Mare and Mar Florinri unregistered trademark are all names for the red and white string from which a small decoration is tied, and which is offered by people on the first day of March. Symbolically, it is correlated to women and to fertility as a means of life and continuity. The tradition is authentic in Romania, Moldova and all territories inhabited by Romanians and Aromanians. Sri Lanka, Sinhala and Hindu New Year. Cultural anthropological history of the traditional New Year, which is celebrated in the month of April, goes back to an ancient period in Sri Lankan history. Various beliefs, perhaps those associated with fertility of the harvest, gave birth to many rituals, customs, and ceremonies connected with the new year. The advent of Buddhism in the 3rd century BC led to a reinterpretation of the existing New Year activities in a Buddhist light. The majority of the people in the country are Buddhists and Hindus, and as such, it is the Buddhist outlook that was predominant in transforming the New Year rites to what they are now. Turkey. Nowruz is mostly celebrated by Kurds in Turkey. It is actually Persian spring festival and beginning of the year. However, it has a national side for Kurds, so they usually try to wear something yellow, red and green which come from Kurdish flag. This day is also important for Turks. It is related with legend of Ergenekon. Ha plus or minus Dar plus or minus Relaz is a kind of Islamic spring festival which is in early May. It is the meeting day of Khidr and Elijah, and going on a picnic is popular activity in the festival. Vietnam. Vietnamese use the traditional lunar as well as the modern solar calendar. They celebrate Ta Ti in late January or early February, is also known as the beginning of spring. The lunar calendar is used mainly to divide the year into seasons for agriculture purposes. In the old days, the celebration used to last the entire month of January of the lunar calendar. Traditionally, firecrackers are used on New Year's Eve, or Rm Giottha in Vietnamese, to scare away bad spirits and souls. Gallery. References. External links: Word Law, Online Etymology Dictionary, Glossary of Meteorology, Solstice, Equinox and Cross-Quarter Moments for 2011 and other years, for several time zones, Earth's seasons, equinoxes, solstices, perihelion, and aphelion, 2000 Euro 2020, seasons and seasonal cusps as pagan and religious holidays. What day does spring start?